right? It matters the policies that come from our governor to include making education more accessible and affordable, particularly at our college system. It includes putting forth a plan that puts us on the pathway to making community college free for folks in this state, right? Because it's essential. It's actually essential. And the other piece that we're going to be rolling out in the coming weeks, and I'll go ahead with the cameras around and share this with you, is that we want to make college free for those at the college level, for those who are committing to go into fields that are high need fields in this state. What are some of those fields? Teaching is a high need field in this state, right? We can't recruit enough teachers. Nursing, nurse practitioners, home care workers, high need areas of this state where we can't find enough. My wife just gave birth to our 3-month-old, and the nurse that had to prep her for surgery traveled from Ponte Vedra Beach 3 hours away to help prep my wife. Why? Because there's a shortage in this particular area, right? And so we got to recruit more folks into that. Forestry is even one of those areas that we need more folks to move into. And so we got to start to put forth, I believe, the kind of bold ideas that give people reasons to show up and reasons for people to show out at the election. And if we can do that, y'all, I have no doubt that we can actually win this state. But it's going to require your help. It's going to require your energy. And since I heard my hype man to my left, I'm gonna bring it down now and let y'all ask some questions that I hopefully can answer so I don't take all of the time here. At the very back, if you don't mind just saying your name and maybe what your major and year is. Okay. We got a mic making its way around him, so.
It's working, wonderful. Let me start by saying I normally don't have a problem projecting my voice from the back, but it's nice to talk with a microphone. And let me just say, Mr. Gillum, Mr. Mayor, wonderful to meet you again.
Good to see you.
My name's Manny. I'm actually not from USF, I'm from UT, and I'm representing the College Democrats over there. And I remember meeting you when you came to USF not too long ago, and you were talking about these wonderful initiatives. And it's those initiatives which really make the Democratic Party, in my opinion, really a more admirable party, because we really are, a party for the people, and we do try to put the people first. And one issue which, might be a prickly issue here is the issue of jobs and segueing further the minimum wage. You were mentioning how several people who live in Florida have to literally work 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet. And, the Republican Party might like to, pride themselves in a party which creates some jobs, but, there's no value in having a job if you're not going to be able to earn enough to make sure that you have enough to support your family or make ends meet, as you would say. And this is where the minimum wage comes in. A lot of the detractors of the minimum wage will say that it'll actually be an unfair burden on businesses who won't be able to provide enough jobs for the people who need them, and it'll end up leading to even greater levels of unemployment. So I know that you'll be very passionate about this. How will you respond to critics of that minimum wage ideal and tell them that it will actually be beneficial for the working populace here in Florida?
Well, that's a good question, and the truth is I would direct them to other states that have done it. New York City isn't hurting for folks to live there, work there, eat there, so on and so forth. California, also, another one of our rival states, right? We're part of the big 3, if you will. New York's no longer in the big 3, we knocked them out. But we've got too many examples of where raising the minimum wage, although predicted on the early end to be the collapse of the economy in those areas, where those places not only continue to exist, but they thrive, right? And so I believe that there are actually some corrections and economies of scale that end up being created. But I will also submit this to you about the minimum wage, and I'm a fan of raising the minimum wage to a living wage. But I'll tell you this much, I don't know a person who seeks minimum. I really don't. And I can tell you this, from barbershops to beauty salons to folks that I encounter on the street, a lot of folks want to earn enough money to do good for themselves. Now, what I believe about a minimum wage, and this is where we come into conflict with the state legislature, because they also, I don't know if y'all have heard the term preemption, but basically it's where the state carves out territory and they say local governments can't regulate, they can't get involved. Minimum wage is one of those. And my feeling about the minimum wage is I actually believe in this state we should be able to allow local governments to set higher minimum wages than what the state even allows. No one can convince me that living and thriving in Miami costs the same as it does in Wakulla County or in Crawfordville, Florida, right? Or in Orlando or in Tampa, Florida. And so this whole idea of preemptions, of carving out, I think there are some uniform things that we ought to have. And largely what I think is that the minimum wage ought to be a floor, a place by which you cannot go beneath. And that in other communities that they ought to have the right, taking into consideration the cost of living, affordability, what it costs to rent or own in that area, the cost of transportation, so on and so forth. They should be able to take those considerations into their decision making. And unfortunately, we carve that out right now. And so, yes, we got to create a minimum wage. And what I mean is a floor by which you build beyond if it becomes necessary. At a local level, should it become necessary. So I'm committed to a $15 wage. But I'm also committing to the fact that people ought to be able to earn a living and take good care of themselves and to take good care of their family. And part of that also, by the way, y'all, comes into play when we talk about changing education in this state. We used to have it such that between 9th grade and 12th grade, if you needed a skill and you weren't on a college-bound track, we had apprenticeships. We had opportunities for folks to get skills that they could monetize, get a job, and from that job build a career. And they could earn a good wage by doing so, right? And so we've got to also invest in the kind of training that's required to make people ready to walk into the jobs that exist today, not just the ones for tomorrow, but the ones that exist today. And in the tech space, we know that there are plenty of jobs where basically people aren't being trained to be able to take advantage of those jobs that exist and that they pay good wages. And so I'm fully committed to a higher minimum wage, a living wage in this state, but I'm also fully committed to trying to create the kind of economy where folks are able to do better than minimum, where they're able to take a vacation once a year, which quite frankly shouldn't be too much to ask in today's day and age. I appreciate the question. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Thank you, Mary Gillum, for coming out. So my name's Gabby, for everyone. I'm actually part of the e-board for College Dems here at USF. And so my question is actually a lot about your experience and what you would have to say to people our age and where we are in our careers and things like that. In the room, we have probably a lot of poli-sci majors, environmental science, maybe just people who aren't even, I'm a biomedical science major, I'm not even in that realm. But you know, people who are passionate about social justice, public policy, things like that. So obviously you've been very successful in your career, and if you had any advice for us, what would you say?
Yeah, I appreciate that, and thank you for reminding me that we might be in a room of people who are very motivated and politically active and are really trying to find a way to engage and to engage meaningfully. I was student body president at my university, so I did get involved early on campus, and my colleagues at the time at FAMU called me Marcher in Chief, and that name came from the fact that I led more protests down to the state capitol. I mean, if they were slicing us anyway, we were, I didn't, on hindsight, some of those marches we could have turned into, I don't know, sit-ins, but whatever. We marched and we protested a lot, and we did that for the things that we believed in. But there are some meaningful ways that we can get involved. Obviously, people often ask me, like, when did you first sort of get involved? And I tell it like it is. Basically, it was 4th grade when I organized students on a petition to lobby the school to trade out the tortilla chips and the vending machines for nacho cheese Doritos. There's just more cheese. There is just more cheese on Doritos. Tortilla chips can't stand the test. But in all serious tones, y'all, there are real meaningful fights that we've got to engage in. And so my first piece of advice would be get in the arena, right? This spectator sporting that is being done, and I'm going to include in that the folks who just tweet about it and never be about it, right? There are folks who will tweet all day long about what they think and what they know, and will never show up to do a thing. They won't register a voter. They won't go to a protest. They won't go down to City Hall and say that those Confederate statues have no place in 2017. Outside of our courthouse, right? So we've got to be in the arena. And, you know, this is selfish, but one way to get into it is volunteer for our campaign. Hold me accountable, right? Not just get on the team, but hold us accountable to what we're supposed to be doing, to stay true and to stay honest to this difficult work that we have ahead. But I'm telling you, we need you to get in the arena on the things that drive you, that give you passion. When I ran for city council, what really was the impetus for that is that my city decided they were going to pass an ordinance that said no more than 3 students, unrelated, could live in a house in a neighborhood. Now to me that was clear age discrimination and discrimination against students. They didn't want students living in neighborhoods. That's the fast forward version of it. And we went down and we went before the city council and told them why we thought it was a bad idea. And when we finished, one commissioner spoke up and she said, students are like house guests. We'd love to see you come, but we can't wait to see you go. Now we all have cracked faces at this point, but everybody on the dais broke out in laughter. And at that moment I was like, okay, we're gonna have to take them out. And that was somebody may have made another calculation like, well, I guess we lost this one. No, we're gonna have to take them out. And we need more of us to make the calculation that if the government or whomever it is that is in power isn't representing our interests, isn't representing the things that we want and that we're demanding, then there are other alternatives. Perfectly legal, democratic participation, civic participation alternatives, right? And so I need your help in answering this question and trying to get more people to become awake. Some of y'all know this phrase, stay woke. We need people to wake up first. And then once we wake them up, we need them to stay woke, right? Because these election cycles, while they come every 2 years or whatever it is that they may be every 4 years, man, change is happening in this state, and it's happening quickly, and it's happening right beneath our noses. I sat down last night for dinner with a bunch of dreamers, folks who were attending school at Florida State University, and I listened to them describe what it was like growing up in this state. The only country they know, right? And yet you got people screaming on the other side, go back home. The only country they know, and what it meant to have to come up with different tales for their teachers around why it is that they couldn't do certain things, why they couldn't produce a social security number. Mom lost it and we can't find it, and the bureaucracy isn't working and it can't get to us in time, or they're telling their friends why it is that they don't have a license to drive a car. This one girl, I prefer to be chauffeured around. You know, and she said, I'll tell you, some of the dreamers are the best storytellers you can imagine, because we had to tell a lot of stories to make sure that we can stay in this country, that we don't get deported, and that our parents don't get deported, right? The only country that they know. And yet we can't compel the folks in Washington to take on comprehensive immigration reform. And the fact that right now there are 14 attorneys generals around this country that are petitioning the federal government to do away with DACA, right? For folks who graduate and matriculate in this state, who have attended, who have played by the rules, who have excellent grades, who have an extremely bright future, but for the fact that their parents were fleeing God knows what and came here, and for whatever reason weren't able to become documented through the legal process. Well, DACA provides them that way forward. And you don't have to be a dreamer to care about that issue. You don't have to be gay in order to care about equality and rights for all people. You don't have to be an environmentalist to care about the future of this planet, where you're going to grow up and where your kids are going to grow up. Right? That we're interwoven in this thing, that we're in this together. This is the only earth I know of. Right? We have to pull in the same direction, y'all. We've got to pull in the same direction, and that requires us activating, becoming awake, staying woke, and then figuring out every way that we can to be involved in this process. And not just electorally, but also on the accountability end, to make sure that the decisions that we want made, that are in our best interest so far as we see it, are the ones that actually prevail. I believe firmly that there are more of us, those of us who are open-minded and more progressive in our thinking, than there are those that are regressive. Unfortunately, that regressive crowd seem to have a very loud microphone right now, largely being wielded by the President of the United States, but he gives cover to a whole range of people that I do not believe are the majority, but right now, they seem to have a pretty loud microphone. Well, it's time for us to clap back. And the way we do that is by organizing and showing up. I appreciate that question right here. Yes, ma'am.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, thank you so much for coming out. My name is Hafsa Qureshi. I am a mass communications major, and I'm also the president of Divest at USF. So Divest at USF is an organization that's asking USF to do two things. Be transparent about our investments, and also create a panel to review our investments and disinvest from controversial institutions like the private prison industry. My question is, how will your agenda address these issues, and what will you do to prevent Florida institutions from funding companies that benefit from the exploitation of prisoners?
Absolutely. So first of all, I appreciate that question, and I'm glad that you are helping to lead that effort here. And I've seen it happening on many more college campuses, thankfully, not just here in Florida, but around the country. I am not a believer in private prisons in this state. Unfortunately, we have them. Our state pensions, which is to your point around where the money is actually going, we couldn't tell you right now. I mean, in a very clear and transparent way, at the secondary and tertiary level, where our investment dollars are intersecting the criminal justice system and largely the private prison system. And so I'm fully supportive. And by the way, this wouldn't be new ground for the legislature. They have found other ways under the Republican leadership to put their values on where our money goes and where it gets spent. And it seems to me the next logical extension, certainly should we be able to elect a Democrat who believes like I believe, and clearly like you believe, that we ought to be putting our money where our mouth is. And so we can't just be against private prisons in this state, and then go off and exploit and use taxpayer money and pension money to invest in other private prison systems. And by the way, they're not doing it accidentally. They're fully well aware of how it is that they're spending the money. That's part of what we've got to fight by virtue of this this prison industrial complex. So the short answer is I'm allied with you on this issue. And as governor, it would be part of our principles. Now, mind you, the governor serves as part of a 4-person cabinet. And it would be our job to convince the cabinet and the legislature that we've got to put our money where our mouth is and divest not only from the institution of private prisons in the state of Florida, but that we got to retract our money and any monies that we have that keep up this, what I believe, Jim Crow system of criminal penitentiaries and what purpose they serve in this country. And by the way, we can say and believe all those things and still believe in safe communities and making sure that we have a criminal justice system that works. Unfortunately, what we tend to have is a system that is unforgiving in its nature, and a system that, quite frankly, doesn't really solve the problem. And I'll just use this as an opportunity to tell you about one program that I started in Tallahassee, which was in the vein of restorative justice, where young people who are first-time juvenile offenders, nonviolent, instead of going before a judge and a court of law and being told that they have committed some crime against the inanimate state of Florida, those cases get deferred to a program that I started called Community Connections. And instead of going before a judge and a jury, they go before a community panel. Maybe the preacher, or maybe the teacher, maybe the principal of the school. It could be the victim, it could be the victim's family. And instead of being told that they've committed a crime against the state, they're told how their actions impacted the community, the neighborhood. And guess what we found? Amongst the cohort that we have graduated out of that program, now 6 years plus running, 96% of them have never gone on to recidivate. The going average in this state for recidivism is around 40%. It works. It actually works. And so we should let the data be our guide when it comes to criminal justice in this state. And I know that goes beyond the reach of your question around divestment. We agreed on that. And the next stage that I think I'd like to take that part of the conversation is to say that we've got to do wholesale reform to make sure that what we're doing is actually working, making our communities safer and not more harmful, not only in the sense of safety and security, but in the sense of the harm that it does to the individual, the family, their children, the neighborhood, and society as a whole.
Definitely.
I appreciate it.
Thank
Absolutely. I don't know if there are questions on this side, and I think we're wrapping up. They're telling me say goodbye.
Well, Mayor,
Actually-
we got time for one more question.
Okay.
I wanted to take a point of personal privilege. My name is Jeff Bergen, the Mayor's Communications Director. I just wanted to shout out Jose,
Yeah.
phenomenal summer intern for us.
Yeah.
That was fun. And I will tell you that again, involved in the campaign. Jose was big for us this summer, held it down every day, working hard.
Jose traveled up from here and spent the summer with us in Tallahassee and Porterhouse. I mean, just went all out, helped keep our office running all summer. You've got another cohort that have come in after you, man, but they got a high bar to reach. I appreciate everything you've done for us, and good luck this semester. So the note doesn't just say goodbye. The note also says that I should say our website, which is andrewgillum.com. And I hope you'll go there, and I hope that you'll join our Club 2018, which is simply asking everybody to give $20.18 as we advance toward this 2018 election. And to sign up, decide that you want to be part of the G unit. I just came up with that, and I'm sure they'll tell me I got to get rid of it. It's too urban. But become part of the G unit and volunteer with our campaign. We also have 2 mugs as gift giveaways, and I'm not sure how we're going to do that. But they're in the back, G unit mugs, and we'll get to that. And then, in fact, Saban, I'm going to pass it to you in 1 second. If there was one final question, we'll take it. Other than that, we'll head out. I'll go to the far end. Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
I'll bring the mic over.
thank you. Hi, I'm Amy. I'm a student here at USF. So I kind of have like a different question for you. I want to know how you feel about your opponents, and more specifically Gwen Graham, if you think she has a chance at winning the election.
Well, I think she does have a chance. In fact, Gwen is probably, I believe, the leading candidate on the Democratic side. As you may know, Gwen is the daughter of former Governor Bob Graham, and who served this state extremely ably. Gwen was also my representative in Tallahassee. She was our representative in Congress. And I worked hard to see Gwen elected. I was proud to see us take that seat back into Democratic hands. Where Gwen and I obviously had a point of departure was on a lot of her votes. I did not like her vote to weaken Obamacare. I did not like her vote to approve the Keystone Pipeline. I did not like her vote on Dodd-Frank. I did not like a host of her votes on various environmental issues. And I certainly did not like her vote on the Syrian refugee crisis, where she joined with the overwhelming majority of Republicans, while Democrats voted with the president to allow, to practically change the immigration system, the refugee system that would have brought to a halt the immigration of refugees into this country. And so where we part is not on personality. I like her very much as a person. Where we part is on the issues. And I'm sure there's a lot that we agree with, but I actually believe that it's time that we have Democrats who are with us on these core fundamental issues that matter. And so I look forward to the debate that we'll have on these issues as the campaign goes forward. But your record matters. My record of 15 years of service matters, and you gotta assess that. Her record of 2 years in Congress also matters, and we have to assess what that means and what that looks like. There's a gentleman out of Central Florida named Chris King who is also running. I don't know a lot about him. He's never been elected before and is new into the race, into public service in this way. And then there's a candidate, potentially candidate, out of Miami. Everyone believes that the mayor of Miami Beach will also enter the race. Philip Levine. And Philip Levine and I have worked together in the U.S. Conference of Mayors. I need to hear him talk more about what he wants to do. I heard him in the lead up to running, and he's it's interesting. You should check it out. What's been said, but you know what I am excited about is the fact that there's actually a contested Democratic primary. We have spent a lot of time handpicking our nominees in this state on both sides, not just the Democratic side, and it takes a whole bunch of people out of the process. It takes a whole bunch of ideas and exchange of ideas out of the process, and it leaves us very little choice. And I believe that absence of choice is what leads to so many of us choosing not to participate by the time those midterm elections come around. And so I'm running in this race, and I'm running unapologetically as a Democrat and as a progressive. And I think that we can actually run that way. I believe we can run that way. I believe we can run that way in this state, and I believe we can run that way and win. And I want y'all to help me make that case as we continue to run this race for governor of the state of Florida. So with that, Savin, am I? Oh,
I'm like a ninja. It popped up.
yeah.
No, please, everybody, give it up for Mayor Gillum. Thank you so much for coming to speak to us. It's lovely to hear such a I like the way you said it, unapologetically Democrat boys. I love it. Just want to highlight something that he said. It is very important for all of us to get involved. He spoke about voter registration. We were actually registering voters in the back. So there it is. So if you guys aren't registered, definitely check it out in the back. Omar and Kamoya are both holding up clipboards. It's also a good idea to get to know them. They're part of College Democrats, our membership director and communications director. So definitely swing by and say hi. Before I let you guys all go, we do have one more speaker who's been so gracious to come out, Mr. Gary.